Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, September the 25th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, what a story. I mean, you don't report this every day, but we understand, based on some information, that Iran is trying to assassinate President Trump. By the way, I don't think it's just President Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if they have other targets. So that's why I'm hoping that not only is President Trump protected, but I'm hoping that former Vice President Pence is also protected, former Secretary of State Pompeo, and other key members of the Trump national security team, because they were, obviously they were not the president, but they were very much identified or as part of the national security team. Remember when we took out Soleimani? Was it in Iraq where we took him out? So I hope that everybody's taking this very, very seriously, because this is, a threat to the sovereignty of the United States. It's a threat to our country, full-blown threat to the country. Maybe some of you remember back in 1993 when then President Bush took a trip to Kuwait. It was, not an official trip, of course. He was not president anymore. But he went to Kuwait on a private trip. And while he was there, we learned that there was going to be an assassination attempt on the former president. And the first thing that Bill Clinton did, President Clinton did, was to go on television and say, this is not acceptable. And he acted militarily against Iraq, took out several military installations and so on. So this is how you react to these things. And this is what, I'm sitting here going, where's President Biden during all of this? He was on The View today. Now, I don't know if that was recorded or live. I'm not familiar with that show because I don't watch it. But it seems to me that there has been more than enough time for President Biden to make a public statement saying, we don't play like that. We don't accept that. And any threat like this is taken very, very seriously, and there will be consequences, serious consequences, if anything like that is done. So again, where's President Biden? This is a moment for him to bring the country together, something that they always talk about. But I'm not surprised that Iran would try to take out a former president, especially like Trump, because he was pretty harsh on them. But of course, when you combine the fact that Iran wants to do this with the open borders that we've had in the country here recently, that's what escalates the threat, because who knows who's in the country. We've let a lot of people in the country and we don't even know who they are. I'm sure 99.9% of them are people who just took advantage of the opportunity. I'm sure 99.9 are just fine. But, you don't, as I say, you don't need a lot of people to carry out a threat like this. And they apparently have teams in the country, which is, a pretty serious matter. So this is a matter of national security. It's not politics. I'm sure that as we saw with Bill Clinton in 1993, he acted very strongly against that attack on former President Bush. And that's how I think President Biden needs to act. I think President Biden needs to go on television tonight and give a formal presentation from the Oval Office saying this is unacceptable, and send a very serious warning to Iran that this is unacceptable, period, unacceptable, and that they will pay some very harsh consequences. Very harsh consequences for doing anything like this. I have a post over at the American Thinker today talking about some of the housing problems that we have in the country. And these housing problems, of course, are compounded by the fact that we've let in 15 million people. Where do you think these people are going to live? Obviously, they have to live in apartments or whatever. And in many cases, they've created some housing problems. We have a little bit of that going on here in the North Dallas area, where a lot of the apartments are full. They're full. They don't have any room because many of the people who've come into the country are living there. And so that's creating, a pricing problem for some of the other people who may be looking for their first apartment, recently married couple or whatever, looking for their first apartment where there's not a lot of inventory, and partly because of the number of people who've come in. And I'm sure it's chaotic like this in other places as well. We talked recently about Springfield, Ohio. I mean, look, I'm sure they're having some big problems there. I mean, when you got a town of 40,000 people, you get 20,000 immigrants. Well, that's going to create a housing problem. That's just sensible. And of course, I'm also thinking of the national security problem now that you hear that Iran wants to take out a former president of the United States. What a mess. I'm waiting for President Biden to come out and clear this up and tell the government of Iran that we will not allow this, that we will not play that way. Well, let's hope that he does it. Speaking of President Biden, he spoke to the UN yesterday. That would have been a great opportunity for him to have said something about this threat from Iran. But he was on The View today. Now, again, I don't watch The View, so I don't even know who goes on that show. But I did see some clips of the president, and I thought it was interesting. It was interesting that he was kind of saying, well, I thought I could win. I thought I could win. And, what does that say? I don't know. What does it say? But it is interesting that, he did it for the country, he says, but he's still saying he could have won. I don't know. Looking at some of the polling problems that Kamala Harris is having, particularly with like the Teamsters, where Trump is winning big time with the Teamsters, Biden would not have had that problem because he always had, he related well to the men and women and the Teamsters and many of the blue collars. He had that Scranton Joe image that I think worked well with some of these groups in the country. But nevertheless, Joe Biden back on The View, talking like a guy who wants to be the candidate again. Now that's kind of, this has been, as I said, an election of total surprises. So nothing would surprise me anymore about this election. We could wake up next week and find out that that Kamala Harris has decided to do something else for a living, and that maybe she's been offered a job at a prestigious California university, one of those things that happen once in a lifetime. And she resigns the vice presidency, and then, of course, Joe Biden becomes the nominee again. Look, it sounds crazy, but this has been a campaign of crazy things. And when you've got Joe Biden on The View today saying what he said, I don't know. You can think whatever you want, but it's been a campaign of crazy. It's been a crazy campaign where a lot of things have happened. I have a post coming out tomorrow where I'm talking about Mark Zuckerberg, the founder, and I guess he's still the owner of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has basically said that he's done with politics, that he's getting out of politics. He's done with politics. And he's going to be, I don't know what he's going to do. I guess he'll continue to run Facebook, but he regrets very much, he says, the way that Facebook became so political and all the influence, all the people he surrounded himself with, more of a left center or left-leaning organization. And he regrets, of course, the laptop story. He regrets basically having done the job of the Biden administration over COVID. He regrets all of that very much, and he wants out of politics. He wants nothing to do with politics anymore. Well, look, if that's what he chooses, that's fine. But I hope that he also understands the damage that he did to our politics. First of all, by basically just carrying that position. I mean, with respect to COVID, if you didn't agree 100% with whoever the scientist was this week, you were canceled from Facebook. People lost their reputations, in some cases lost their jobs. So, Zuckerberg's censorship had a very serious impact on many people, including a bunch of my friends who got canceled from Facebook or suspended or whatever. So that is a negative thing that he did, and I hope he regrets it. The other thing that he did, of course, was the laptop. The laptop denied the American people, or the information about the laptop denied the American people the opportunity to know what we now know about that laptop and the influence and the role that money played in the Biden family. So again, I wish Zuckerberg good luck. I hope he likes whatever he's going to do now. I mean, I guess he's going to stay with Facebook, but I hope that he likes what he's doing now. And but he should remember that there were some very serious consequences to what he did, and the consequences were on the presidential election, and the fact that he basically carried the water for the government position on COVID, which I think, as we know now in retrospect, turned out to be very exaggerated. So good luck to Mark Zuckerberg. One last thing I wanted to tell you is that in these polls that have come out, there's too many polls that have coming out, by the way, so we got to be careful. But one I thought was interesting, and this is a poll that I think came out with CNN, where they were saying that a majority of Americans prefer the Trump economy, that they have a favorable view of the Trump economy. And I think that's going to be a major factor on election day. I mean, I know that the head-to-head polls basically show within the margin of error, but when you get inside the numbers, I think you begin to see that certainly the trend is there to favor Trump. Whether that will eventually turn into votes for Trump, I don't know. That's what we will find out. But clearly, Trump is ahead on the issues. As you read some of these polls, no question that Americans prefer him on the issues, the economy, foreign policy, the border, immigration, clearly energy policy. They prefer him on the issues, and whether that translates into votes on election day, well, I sure hope so. But that's we don't know. We will find out on election day. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye, everybody.